Hello, and welcome to this session in the Great HR Grapevine Conference about navigating global HR pain points and the AI solutions for 2025. I'm joined here by my colleague and a good friend, Jim Drury. Hi, Jim. Welcome.
Thanks, GK. Glad to be here.
And I'm GK Kunduri, Gangadhar Kunduri. I'm the head of product at Globalization Partners. And we'll be talking through this exciting topic today. So today, we'll be discussing 4 key pain points that global HR leaders face. And it could be a manager, it could be a director, it could be a CTO that is hiring in global areas. What are the pain points that they encounter? And what are some AI solutions to those pain points? And how to solve them so that your business can grow fast past these pain points. Firstly, we'll talk about the challenges of global hiring and what does that entail. Next, we'll talk about the complexity of managing an entity and an entity in every country that you want global presence in, and the alternatives to that. Third, we'll talk about how to manage onboarding in a compliant way globally and the AI solutions for that. And finally, we'll talk about how to maintain compliance across this ever-changing global compliance landscape. And again, the AI solutions that can help with solving those pain points. So without further ado, let us jump into the very first of these pain points.
And it's a great one. So we'll start with this first one. I don't know where to start with global hiring. And that's really not surprising. Even for those of us who are experts in this area, probably the first word that springs to mind when you think of global hiring is complexity. There's a lot to consider. And so when your company decides to expand globally, often your HR team really only specializes in 1 or 2 countries. And you don't necessarily have the right policies, procedures, or even understand who the different personas are that are going to support your business. So between legal, finance, and almost every team at your company, you're going to have to think about what it means to expand globally. So GK, you've spent a lot of time thinking about this. What are your thoughts?
That is a pain point for sure. And you know that the complexity is very high when the question starts with, I don't know where to start, which means that there are many, many avenues of complexity there. And we at GP are fortunate to work with a lot of customers who have a lot of different scenarios for which they're looking at global expansion and global hiring. And there are many scenarios that we see from our customers. Firstly, we see many customers requiring to grow globally because that is how they get access to the top talent that is required in today's cutting-edge business landscape. Access to talent is one of the biggest things that businesses need to grow and thrive and be innovative and be at the cutting edge. And that is a big reason for global expansion. And moving fast into new markets, which is a business imperative today. We also see a lot of these reasons of global hiring coming from mergers and acquisitions, needing to integrate with acquisitions, needing to integrate and support employees compliantly across borders during these kind of complex organizational transitions necessitated by mergers and acquisitions. Employee relocation. Fun fact, my first tryst with EOR came from an employee relocation scenario in my startup several years ago, where somebody wanted to relocate to another country along with his girlfriend. And relocating workers internationally would also require navigating not just the labor laws and other aspects, but also navigating visas and the employment requirements for that. And another big one that we encounter is entity wind downs. So you may have created or inherited entities through mergers and acquisitions, and now you want to close down operations or wind that down because you want to manage things in a better way. And finally, you may have started off with a contractor, but the relationship has grown, and now it is necessary to classify that contractor as a full-time employee based on the classification requirements in that particular country to stay compliant, and and that is another reason. So there are, and these are just six paths. There are many other paths that we see from our customers, and there are, so as a result, many ways why somebody wants to grow globally, and it is not easy to encounter to solve these different use cases. As we can see, it comes with a lot of complexities, and it requires multiple parties in a company to work together if you want to do that by starting an entity. In this particular example, we're talking about Pete, a CTO. This is me in my startup a few years ago, like I mentioned earlier. Pete, the CTO, wants to expand the team into multiple global markets, but they go to the CHRO, and the CHRO discovers that you need to have an entity in these countries because there are global compliance and legal and HR matters that need to be dealt with. After much research and maybe even involving an external counsel in the matter, they would then collaborate with the CFO to spend significant time along with legal to create an entity. So there are multiple access points where things are moving forward here, right? Obviously, complexity is increasing. Obviously, time, it is taking a lot more time to do this. And obviously, cost is doing it. But the latent thing across these is the opportunity cost. The business is waiting to expand into these global markets until all these things are resolved and all this time and expense is put in. And that really is the bigger cost, the opportunity cost of the delay in getting into a new market.
Yeah, I think that's an element that a lot of folks don't consider, just how much of the organization gets involved. It's a great thing to call out as a frequently overlooked item.
Absolutely, Jim, and we hear that from all of our customers all the time, as you see also, and this, a lot of that is also because they don't have the global expertise. So a significant time and expense are put in between Pete, Mary, and Tony, as we talked about on the previous slide, and after a lengthy search, if they have identified a few new hires, and now you need to wait until all these things are resolved before you hire those prospective candidates and get an employment contract. These are taking away a lot of time and money from the key business imperatives. For example, in this case, Mary may lack all the compliant benefit guides and handbooks and everything in a specific country that they are looking to expand into. And Tony may be missing out on having all the expertise on the legal and compliance tasks and tax laws that are required in a particular country. So not only is it time and money, but it's also lack of expertise. And that is why it takes a long time. And this long process slows down onboarding and becoming productive. So this lack of global expertise is putting a significant time and expense on Pete's goal to hire quickly and scale the business to meet company demands, which I think is the business imperative.
Yeah, it also sounds like this is potentially exposing the company to risk. If they don't know what they don't know, then there's an opportunity to maybe do things in a way that's not compliant.
That is such a good point, Jim. It is not, and that is why it takes long, and that is why you need to rely on an expert to do this. And that is why there are opportunities for you to do this much faster with a product like EOR that GP provides. This is actually interesting. As you know, Jim, we've been doing annual AI at Work report here at GP, and we released that for this year recently. And there are some very interesting statistics. The stat I like the most on this slide is actually the smallest number to the right, the less than 2%, but I'll hold my horses before I get there. 82% of HR leaders believe AI is critical to the success of their company. These are just 3 data points from our AI at Work report. You can get access to the full report from our website. But 82% believe AI is critical. And 91% of executives say their company's AI initiatives are scaling. So great. They think it is critical. They think the initiatives are scaling. So where is the rub? Less than 2% of executives believe they have the right talent to successfully implement AI. So it is critical, it is scaling, but they do not have the right talent to successfully implement it. And it goes back to one thing we talked about earlier is one of the biggest drivers and use cases for global expansion is access to talent. I'm sure, Jim, you are as VP of Product Platform, you are implementing key AI platform components and capabilities into the product. So do you encounter these scenarios with respect to access to AI talent?
Certainly, it's one of the hottest labor markets I've ever seen. There are few people out there with the skills to really make a difference when it comes to AI. And our own AI development team is a global team. So, we practice what we preach when it comes to global employment and looking for the best talent around the world.
So it looks like the AI at Work report is actually reflecting all the scenarios that people like you are encountering as they want to expand. So the answer clearly is to meet the business imperative and the criticality of AI for the success of the company is to expand globally. And which brings us back to all the pain points we talked about so far, all the pain points in compliance, expertise, time, and expense related to global hiring. So that gets us to what are the key aspects to know when you're actually doing global hiring. Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about some of these key aspects?
Yeah, so I think we just talked a little bit about talent availability, and depending on what sector you're in and who you're hiring, that really can drive a lot of need for global growth. Understanding where talent exists, understanding how to compensate them. It's not just pay; it's making sure you've got the right comprehensive benefits. And even there, there's in a lot of countries you're going to have a compliant minimum that you really need to do just to enter the market. But you're not going to get the best talent if you just go in with the minimum. And so that's where understanding what the best practices in a given market will really help you do. So you need to comply. You need to make sure that you're fully compliant, but you also need to be able to go beyond that into the best practices. So that's a critical piece, and you want to make sure that you've got it nailed down.
That is so true. And the cookies on the screen were distracting me for a second from the pain points and keys to global hiring. But these are the keys to global hiring, and fortunately, we have a great AI native solution called Gia, which is a global HR agent that can answer all of your questions and give you guidance from day one on your global expansion plans and provide you with agentic guidance and AI guidance for your talent availability, the compliant documents and compliance regulations within a country. But I think we are going to double click into that a little bit more a little later. But it's not just pain points. There are good AI-driven solutions that help with all these keys to global hiring.
Indeed.
So we talked about our very first pain point, which is I don't know where to start with global hiring. And I don't know how to simplify the global hiring. Unfortunately, there are good solutions and AI-driven solutions to be able to solve that, which takes us to the second pain point. I don't have the time or the funds, or it doesn't say it on the slide, but I don't have the luxury of the opportunity cost to start a legal entity. And how do I solve that? I think that is the key pain point that many of our customers are engaging with. So yes, there may be some examples where you may need to establish an entity, but the answer in most cases is to not have to and not have to pay that opportunity cost, right, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to the opportunity costs, there are a number of direct costs. And I think we can advance to take a look at those. So, for example, we've got legal and professional fees. You're going to have to incorporate your entity. You need to register. You need to keep that current. A lot of countries have minimum capital requirements. And then you need a place to do business. So you've got office setup, operational costs, ongoing, just the costs stack up, and they're often not obvious when you start. You may think, oh, it's simple. I'll just do this paperwork and we can start hiring in the country where we want to do business. The reality is almost always much more complex and extends all the way to, beyond your direct employee costs into insurance, risk management. There's just a lot of compliance, and it's different by country. And in some cases, it's not even by country. You're going to have regions within a country that are going to have slightly different regulations that you need to comply with. So all that expense and all that complexity comes back to this notion of an opportunity cost. So even if you can afford all of this, it puts cognitive load on your business. Your smart people in your company have to think their way through these problems, devise a strategy, and then execute it. So doing all that is extremely challenging. And then just when you think you've got it nailed, the rules change. So compliance is a complex area that's always in flux. So just because you're compliant today doesn't mean you're compliant tomorrow. And that's why it's best to partner with someone who is compliant, and it's our business to continuously be compliant. That's why an EOR is so powerful.
That is such a good point. I love the term you used, putting more cognitive load on the business rather than relying on the experts to do that. So there may be a specific, very specific areas like like you have you are operating in a regulated industry where you may need to create a legal entity, but in most other scenarios, it makes sense to leverage experts, avoid the cognitive load that you talked about, and make business move at the pace the business needs to move, and hence with GP EOR and GP contractor, you can hire in new markets in weeks and sometimes even in days rather than months, and keep compliant. How are the technology platforms here helping, Jim? I know it's a passion of yours.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Again, to reduce the complexity, to make it easier for the user. And so when you're going to hire, there are a lot of decisions you have to make. For instance, should this person be an EOR employee or a contractor? And the answer to that's going to differ by jurisdiction. And we have an AI-powered solution that helps you classify with a high degree of confidence what kind of employee you should hire in what kind of area for what type of role. So that really allows you to be confident that you're making a decision right the first time, to hire quickly, and again, to reduce that cognitive load so you can focus on what's important, which is achieving your business outcomes, not worrying about the details of compliance and whether you've categorized your employees correctly. So this really allows you to be effective, expanding globally with a lot less initial capital outlay and a lot less organizational complexity.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And even if you are testing a new market and starting with a small number of employees and maybe testing multiple new markets in parallel. Partnering with an EOR will enable you to do that quickly and test and expand.
Exactly. I think especially in scenarios where you're not sure your long-term strategy is going to keep you in a country, EOR is absolutely the right option. You can get in there, you can explore your business opportunities, understand whether you have traction, and then make a decision for the long term.
Awesome, awesome. So we started with a very broad pain point number one. I don't know where to start with global hiring, and moved to a specific pain point to move that forward. As in, I don't have the time or the funds, or maybe cannot afford the opportunity cost to start a legal entity. And now I want us to go deeper into a third pain point. Okay, so you made the decision to do global hiring based on the compensation benchmarks and everything else. And you made the decision to go with a solution like an EOR rather than creating an entity. And now I don't know how to onboard global employees, what are the compliant needs, etc. And Jim, do you have a technology solution for it? AI driven?
Yeah, do I? We actually have we have a product feature called the Global Compliance Engine, and it runs behind the scenes. So every screen you interact with, where we're collecting data or transforming data within the GP platform, is connecting with this Global Compliance Engine to make sure that everything is done in compliance with the current regulations and also in compliance with the best practices that GP has established over the last decade plus of global growth advising and business. So you get you get the compliance side, you get the policy and best practice side, and you get the benefit of GP's expertise in every interaction with our product suite.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you need to ensure a lot of things in onboarding. You need to ensure that the person has the right to work. You need to ensure that the visa requirements are met. You need to make sure that the right terms are in the employment agreement. You need to decide whether you want to honor probation period or not, and how long the probation period should be, what is legally required, but also what is the best norm on it based on best practices. The vacation balance, whether you want to recognize seniority and how vacation balance and probation periods change based on that. What kind of benefits do you want to offer? Some may be statutory and some may be optional that are required. And all of these need to be tracked. The right decisions need to be made for a particular country, need to be kept consistent across all the employees you're hiring in that particular country, and kept track of during onboarding and in the contract. So that's a lot to keep track of. So I'm glad there is an AI-driven global compliance engine that has a end-to-end solution that enables with all this.
It does. And I'll just point out, in addition to all those items you mentioned, they're interrelated. So changing one of them can change the compliance posture for another one. It's almost impossible to do manually. And so with GCE, we provide that framework to make sure that even if you decide to change something like, say, recognition of seniority, we cascade that decision through the entire rest of the process, all the way through the contract. So that allows you to be confident that every decision results in a compliant outcome.
Got it. Got it. And it builds all that logic into our platform so that you can be assured that compliance is taken care of and you are compliant without the need for any manual reviews as you are hiring and also making changes to a particular employment term as the things go by. But particularly during onboarding, this is a big thing. Are there are also specific things with respect to the contract, multilingual requirements with respect to the contract, wet signature versus e-signature requirements with respect to contract, and are all those rules also plugged into the global compliance engine, Jim?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It wouldn't be globally compliant if we didn't cover all those scenarios.
And global compliance engine has these rules across all 180 plus countries and markets, so that and even goes down to the level of the state and even the CBA area, collective bargaining agreement area in certain countries, so that when you are hiring a particular person in a particular locality, not just in a country, you are onboarding and employing that person in a very, very compliant terms.
Absolutely. And I would highlight the CBA compliance needs as a thing that, potentially might not be expected if you're from a country that doesn't commonly use CBAs. So that's a great example of how the global compliance engine is looking out for our EOR customers to make sure that they don't end up in a situation that they didn't expect, helps them reduce risk and remain compliant.
Got it. And Jim, I'd like us to double click a little bit on the compliance engine here and how you're using AI-driven technology to keep up with all these rule changes.
Yeah.
What is the tech underneath? I know you're passionate about it, but can you digest it out for our audience?
Sure. So behind the scenes, we directly ingest the law in all the countries and all the regions where we do business. We then have a proprietary AI transformation pipeline that turns that information into rules. And then GCE itself uses those rules behind the scenes to help make determinations throughout our product suite. So every product interaction benefits from this AI-powered system that turns law into practices. So that way we know that everything that you do can be grounded back to the law, grounded back to compliant outcomes. And so this is one of those instances where your interaction with AI is not maybe through a chatbot, it's behind the scenes. And so we're using the large scale AI system to make sure that these outcomes are compliant. We also, of course, do have what we call GP Assist, which fits in as well to provide an interactive AI workflow. So if you want to ask a question about compliant outcomes, if you want to say if we're to hire in country A versus country B, we can actually give you feedback on that in real time. So it's not only guiding you through kind of structured workflows like creating a contract, it's also helping advise you as to what your right next path might be. And it makes sure that you stay on the right side of compliance, reduces your risk, and hopefully keeps things simple so you can focus on your core business and sleep well at night knowing that your global growth is covered.
And thank you for sharing that, Jim. And the secret sauce is also the 10 plus years of proprietary data that we have collected by operating in all these different countries, and the professionals that we have hired and managed through all these different countries. So that data is the secret sauce, and it is input into the global compliance engine in addition to the statutory requirements.
Yeah, that's a great point. And without exposing too much of the details of how it works, we have what we call a human in the loop process. So at every stage of creating these rules, processing these laws, et cetera, we have the world's best global employment experts involved. So they're helping us curate and create new value out of all that raw material, and then combine it with, like you said, our secret sauce, 13 plus years of executing global growth strategies for our customers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that is why we talk about our solution as technology when you need it, but human when you want it. Awesome. Awesome. So again, we we walked through three different pain points. We started off with, hey, where do I start? And then went to, hey, I can't afford the opportunity cost of entity. And then we talked about, how do I onboard global employees in a very, very compliant fashion, keeping up with all the changes through AI-driven solutions as the answer. Let's talk about the fourth pain point, beyond onboarding. I don't know how to handle like ongoing compliance monitoring. Do compliance laws change so regularly in one country across all the countries, and how do I keep track of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of complex topics, many of which you see on this slide. Even if the rules don't change, there will be sensitive areas like, say, offboarding, where you need compliance, but you don't want to automate it, right? And we don't automate offboardings. So in the unfortunate event that you need to separate an employee from service, there's always a human in the loop at GP to make sure that we're handling that delicate process effectively, accurately, and compliantly on your behalf. So with GP, we kind of bring the legal piece with technology as with human expertise. So we've got HR legal specialists in all the countries we do business. They're guiding you on these norms, these cultural practices, and the best practices for how to handle sensitive situations. We also have those same people, as mentioned earlier, feeding into our technology. So those experts help curate and manage the data that drives our decision making and feeds our AI assistants. So in every scenario, you've got both humans when you need them for those really sensitive scenarios, but AI-powered solutions to deliver that on-demand, in-the-moment help that you need, so you're not there waiting for support. So, in our opinion, I think we deliver an excellent blend of those two types of service.
That's awesome. So that is a great example of technology when you need it, but human when you want it, which is blended into our solution. And whether it is GP Assist, that is the co-pilot embedded within our EOR and contractor products, or whether it is our global HR agent GP Gia, they're both classic examples of that. And both of those will require us to stay compliant with AI. So let's talk about that a little bit. Our customers need to stay compliant with AI for many things, right? HR compliance is a very critical and a very complex challenge. Employment practices need to be compliant, and they are complex. They involve employment laws. You need to set fair salaries and benefits. And AI has to keep you updated on law changes for full compliance, like you talked about earlier. And analyzing all this data and helping manage the entire employee lifecycle is critical. All of this, in this day and age of AI agents, clearly tells us that there is a need for an AI agent to do all this. And fortunately, we have Gia, which is our global HR agent that helps us with that. Um, our teams have built, leveraging our decade long of global employment and legal expertise, a global HR agent that can do all these things for you, whether you have your own legal entity or whether you're using an EOR like GP, or whether you are about to get into a global expansion scenario like we had talked about earlier through many different paths. In any of these scenarios, the global HR agent is there for you to analyze and draft or critique employment contracts, generate or examine offer letters, create compliance Q&As, create your HR policies and employee handbooks, and give you compliance alerts as these small in region but large in aggregate changes happen with respect to employment laws in all these different countries. So this is an AI agent that does all these things for you so that you as HR and legal parts of the company don't need to worry about doing these and can focus on business expansion and not have to pay the opportunity cost of having to do all these things manually or wait for an external counsel to do that.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's very different than, say, off-the-shelf AI that one might, let's say you sign up with ChatGPT. You may generate something that looks like a contract, but it's probably not compliant. And this is where Gia sets itself apart. It's rooted in the same expertise as all the rest of GP's products and services. So when we do a contract review with the Gia AI agent, you're going to get a compliant result. And that's really something that is unique in the market and, I think is different than you'll experience with other types of AI.
And Jim, this is not a topic to double click in this presentation, but probably in another presentation. But we have built patent pending technology that minimizes hallucination significantly compared to anything else out there in the market. And we have complex reasoning technology that is built into this, which will enable customers to get the best agentic behavior out of the global HR agent Gia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. That's a topic for another day.
And with our industry leading and amazing AI-driven EOR and contractor solutions, you can hire, onboard, and manage teams in 180 plus countries quickly and compliantly without a need to set up entities. And leveraging our global HR agent Gia, you can stay up to date and be compliant in any country. And regardless of whether you have your own entity or whether you are using EOR or exploring. And you can learn more about all of these by attending a live demo of our global employment products coming to a theater near you. And you can scan to register and pick up a date and time using the QR code in front of you right now. So, Jim, thank you so much for joining me in walking all of our audience through the pain points. And the pain is gone. And now we are going out of this talk with the pain being gone, but the AI-driven solutions with us to take the business forward with global expansion, armed with the compliance expertise and the AI-driven solutions from GP.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, GK. It's always great to share the great work that our teams are doing with an audience like this. So thank you to our hosts. Thank you, GK. It's been good.
Thank you so much.